I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, December the 17th, 2014. American Jewish aid worker Alan Gross has been released after 5 years in a Cuban prison. According to a U.S. official, Gross was released today in a humanitarian prisoner exchange. Gross was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison in 2009 for, quote, crimes against the state, for providing computers and internet access to the Jewish community in Cuba. He is now 65 years old and in poor health. He had said this summer that he could not take another year in prison. Gross was said to have been exchanged for 3 Cubans jailed in the U.S. and was headed back home on a government plane today. A draft resolution of Palestinian statehood was being presented today to the United Nations Security Council. Palestinian Authority Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki told French news agency AFP today that it is the French draft based on, quote, Palestinian observations and decisions. The Palestinian proposal was said to include a 2-year deadline for Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank. The original French draft was said to set a deadline for peace agreement but did not mention withdrawal. The French version also had included recognition of Israel as a Jewish state, something that Maliki said was removed from the draft submitted today. And while U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has not commented one way or another on what the U.S. will do regarding the resolution, Palestinian sources claim Kerry told them that the U.S. would veto the resolution, as it has done with unilateral actions of the Palestinians at the UN in the past. Meanwhile, the European Union has backed a resolution on the recognition of a Palestinian state in principle. A symbolic vote held today called on the EU's member states to recognize Palestinian statehood as part of an agreement with Israel. It said the European Parliament supports in principle recognition of Palestinian statehood and the two-state solution, and believes these should go hand in hand with the development of peace talks, which should be advanced. And staying with the EU, the body has taken Hamas off of its terror list. The terror group was apparently removed from the list due to a technical issue, that the evidence used to place the group there in the first place did not meet European standards. 2 EU countries are said to be working on providing the court with evidence that will satisfy its placement on the terror list. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the EU's claim that this was a technical matter and called on them to put Hamas back on the terror list immediately. The Prime Minister said Hamas is a murderous terrorist organization whose charter says that its aim is to destroy Israel. We will continue to fight it with determination and strength so that it will never realize its aims. A statement from the EEAS, the EU's External Action Service, led by EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, said the ruling regarding Hamas was a legal and not a political one. It said this legal ruling is clearly based on procedural grounds and it does not imply any assessment by the court of the substantive reasons for the designation of Hamas as a terrorist organization. Canada and Australia announced yesterday that they would not attend today's Geneva Convention conference in Switzerland. The conference focuses on Israel and the situation in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird called the conference one-sided and politicized, which he said serves only to single out Israel for criticism. Baird said Canada was confident that Israel was capable of investigating matters surrounding the events that took place during the conflict with Gaza this summer on its own, and said such a misguided approach, referring to the conference, will neither serve the cause of peace nor bring the parties closer to a negotiated settlement. Israel and the U.S. have expressed their criticism of the conference, as have American Jewish organizations. B'nai B'rith International had sent a letter to Swiss Ambassador to the U.S. Martin DeHinden. In it, BBI President Alan Jacobs and Executive Vice President Daniel Mariachin noted that over the course of over half a century, the state parties to the conventions have exclusively been convened to focus on Israel, a small democracy struggling against violent extremists sworn to its very destruction, and to the indiscriminate targeting of its citizens. And CEO of the World Jewish Congress, Robert Singer, said that by again singling out Israel, there is a real danger that the Geneva Conventions are being politicized and undermined. U.S. President Barack Obama released a Hanukkah message last night at the beginning of the holiday, which the president noted reminds Jews across the globe of the triumph of freedom over oppression and the possibility of miracles. Obama said the courage of the Maccabees reminds us that we too can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. And turning to our programming for tonight, the second night of Hanukkah. On L'chaim tonight at 9 o'clock, Mark Golub sits down with the president of Maccabi USA, Ron Karner, who talks about prior Maccabi games and previews the 2015 games in Berlin. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, December the 17th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader. Chag Sameach.